Morning to you. This is TalkRadio Breakfast with me, Julia Hartley-Brewer. Thank you very much indeed for your company. Let's turn our attention to climate change because, it's the number one issue for everyone. Well, if you watch BBC and Sky News, you'll probably think it is. Goodness me, they talk of nothing else. We're all going to die because it's going to be, 87 Celsius on the planet by tomorrow or something like that. I mean, to be honest with you, that's not out of the realms of the sort of claims that are being made. We did see the US climate envoy, John Kerry, claiming that global warming is now beyond catastrophic at the weekend, and we're headed for up to 4 centigrade Celsius warming. Again, something that's simply not backed up at all by any of the serious scientific evidence on this. But now we've seen announced today that it is highly likely that we will see the government here in the UK speeding up their plans to reach the UK climate change target of 2050 of having net zero carbon emissions. The Prime Minister is going to announce later this week that he wants carbon emissions in the UK to be cut by 78% by 2035. That's almost 15 years earlier. So, how on earth are we going to do that? Well, they never seem to tell us, do they? Let's talk to Harry Wilkinson. He's head of policy at the Global Warming Policy Forum. Good morning to you, Harry.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
We hear day in, day out about climate change. We hear constantly about how catastrophic it is. We often have really unscientifically based claims made by people, including, by the way, young Greta Thunberg, who was a subject of a BBC documentary series at the moment, which is simply not backed up by anything that's been claimed by the IPCC and other world authorities on the risk factors involving climate change. And now we're told that the government is going to speed up its plan to, by law, to cut our climate emissions down to net zero by 2035 instead of 2050. How are they going to do that?
Well, yes, there's this huge inconsistency between the ever-increasing ambition, as they call it, in terms of climate change policy. And yet, therefore, we're also told at the same time that the taxes aren't going to have to rise to pay for it. And actually, we're all going to be better off from this process anyway. But in reality, we're going to need to make big changes. People are going to have to change the way they heat their homes, drive their cars. And the government are talking about forcing people to adopt alternatives. Now, that element of compulsion is bound to leave people worse off because they're going to have less choice. And they're going to be forced to adopt technologies that they wouldn't otherwise choose to use.
Yes, these aren't going to be cheaper technologies because you wouldn't need to force people to adopt cheaper technologies. They'd happily do it. And this is the thing. We know that Philip Hammond, when he was the Chancellor of the Exchequer, I'm not a fan of Philip Hammond, other than this one thing that he did where he actually got some vague sense of some facts out here. When Theresa May was busy bringing in Parliament and whipping her own MPs along with all the other MPs in the country, signing up apparently to this idea of this net zero emissions by 2050 for a nice headline and sitting on the world stage and preening. It was only Philip Hammond who actually released some documentation carried out by the Treasury, which unusually it doesn't do it over lockdown, but it does do it over climate change. The £1 trillion plus cost of delivering this, because this isn't just about someone paying an extra tenner on a flight to cut emissions or anything. That's a load of nonsense, isn't it? We are talking about people having to spend thousands upon thousands of pounds, either themselves paying for a new boiler, for instance, in no gas boilers, or taxpayers paying for homes to have these installed. We're talking about an end to not just diesel cars and petrol cars as being sold firsthand, but realistically not being able to be sold on our roads secondhand. We know electric cars cost an absolute fortune and already subsidised. We're talking about people being priced out of flying abroad on holiday. We're talking about huge tax rises, energy bills going up by huge factors. And yet none of the politicians who are pushing this are giving us the facts on this. So we're told this is just a wonderful thing to achieve. But we're told that people support it because poll after poll says that people think this is a great idea. But they don't, for some reason, ever think to tell us what the actual cost of it would be.
That's right. And I think it's striking that they spent the best part of 2 years actually trying to cover up these figures. So if they were comfortable talking about the cost, they certainly wouldn't feel the need to cover up their own modelling that was showing that the cost would be this high. And also, their estimates were much higher than what the CCC were saying. 40% higher.
The climate, that's the Climate Change Committee.
And yet ministers were told to use the lower figure, even though their own officials told them that the higher figure was more realistic. So there's been some significant deception here about the costs involved. And we know with Boris Johnson, he loves a big project. He had his garden bridge that never happened when he was mayor. He had Boris buses. They have come in, and he's had Boris bikes. He loves a grand project. He loves to see this ego boost that will give him the legacy that he's craving. And he's jumped onto this latest one with climate change. However, he's clearly not being honest about the costs involved. And if COP26, this is the big conference, international conference, when all the world leaders are going to discuss their climate change policies, if he was really keen on the green agenda and it meant more than an ego boost to him, then why would it matter that it was online? That's what all the other world leaders have been telling him to do.
And this is the thing.
He's so desperate that he should have this grand conference in person when we know the risks of COVID, and we know that it would be much greener to hold it online. And yet he's insisting that it should take place in person.
All climate summits are held normally with some wonderful location, and everyone goes on a nice big freebie. And it's one of the benefits of being an environmental journalist, isn't it? You get all these freebies and all the scientists as well. But it is absolutely fascinating. Again, it's even like the likes of John Kerry, who is the the climate envoy for the United States. He goes everywhere by private jet. I mean, it's absolutely laughable, frankly. And most of the people you see, whether it's Prince Harry or anyone else, most of the people pontificating on this stuff don't live it themselves. What they want to do is change other people's lives. But this is the thing. When we're told these policies are popular and they're necessary and they're vital, they're necessary, A, the people who are pushing them don't live them themselves, but B, if they genuinely thought that this was something they could genuinely persuade people that, look, this is the cost, this is the risk. We had a proper debate about it. There is no proper debate on this issue anymore in the British media. It is just climate change, la, 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 we're all going to die, we're all going to die. Look at the fires, look at the floods. There is no proper sensible debate involving scientists on both sides, politicians on both sides actually debating these issues. That's long gone now. If they genuinely thought that the public were behind this, they would give us all the facts and they would tell us what the cost was, tell us what the changes to our life was. But we don't see that. And that's a bit of a giveaway, isn't it?
That's right. And one extraordinary fact is actually we've reduced emissions by 50% since 1990, but we've gone from 90% fossil fuel usage in terms of our primary energy supply in 1990 to about 80% now. So we still overwhelmingly rely on fossil fuels, and yet we've achieved a massive reduction. Yep. So I've got no doubt that we're going to be a much cleaner, greener country in the future.
Yep.
And a lot of that progress is going to happen through efficiency savings, through the free market, delivering the services and goods that people need in a much more efficient way.
It's going to be cleaner. It's going to be cleaner. It's going to be more efficient. It's going to happen anyway. People didn't need to be bribed or forced into going into cars instead of riding horses. They made that decision themselves. The thing I find extraordinary is that because of this big summit, is COP26. I mean, most people don't even know what it's about, and very sensible of them. Apart from the fact that to get a nice headline, and when he's on that stage, if it does happen, Boris Johnson is going to commit British taxpayers to huge costs to their own lives and big changes to their own lives just for that nice headline. And I have to say, I mean, I just think when the British public find out, they're going to be furious. Harry Wilkinson from the Global Warming Policy Forum, always good to talk to you, sir. 9:44 is the time. Let's turn our attention to subject we